Welcome to the Saturday edition of the Fast Five Business News by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and hello, Sean Aylmer.
Hello, Michael.
Sean, on weekdays, it's all about the Fast Five, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. On the weekend, though, we still keep it to 5 minutes, but we're going to pick out our biggest business story of the week, the most remarkable business story, a mystery category, and then that one changes every week, and then our favourite business-related story. Let's jump straight into the biggest business story. The biggest story broadly this week, as it has been for the last 6 weeks now, is the war in Iran, from the peace talks last weekend, the US blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, Trump criticising Australia, the impact that everything has had on markets. If we take that, right, and then look at the next biggest story being the flow-on from that, what did you see?
I think what's happening with businesses, it's corporate confession time. They're 9 months through the financial year. Corporates are kind of understanding what's going on. Qantas came out this week and said that it hundreds of millions of dollars of extra costs, mostly because of refining costs. Virgin came out. They've actually hedged their refining costs. They're looking a bit better. Westpac said it's going to increase its bad debt buffers, concerned that some businesses won't be able to repay their loans quite as well. Cleanaway Waste Management, guys, pick up your garbage. They've cut its earnings, citing higher fuel and logistics costs. Aurora's glass factory in the UAE is effectively not manufacturing bottles. We've got the ACTU making claims in the Fair Work Commission around travel expenses. We're just seeing a lot more of that stuff at the moment, and we'll continue to see that in the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. The other big one, I think, is the political angle to this and just how precarious our fuel and oil supplies are. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has been on a bit of a regional tour this week. He's been to Brunei, he's been to Malaysia, and he's making deals trying to shore up our supply, or at least we can't get guarantees of supply, but what he is trying to get us is preferential treatment, essentially, with our trading partners, because we have got something to offer. For instance, Malaysia supplies a lot of our fuel, but Australia supplies 100% of Malaysia's LNG, right? So we are not without leverage in this particular scenario. Our fuel supplies are secured until the end of May. It is kind of getting into June now. After that, though, who knows? And this just shows kind of how precarious this is, and the fact that they are having to do deals and to really scramble to make sure we're going to be able to get the supply we need. Worst possible timing, right, for one of our 2 refineries to catch fire, with Viva Energy refinery in Victoria ablaze this week. Terrible timing in a very precarious situation right now.
Totally.
Golly. Now, Sean, most remarkable. Just take yours away, because yours is a next level story.
Well, it's the West Australian Supreme Court handed down a judgment after more than 13 years between the families of Lang Hancock and Peter Wright. Hancock and Wright, they're the guys who opened up the Pilbara to large-scale iron ore mining. It's kind of why Rio makes a lot of money out of iron ore mining, because it's done a deal with Lang Hancock's former company. Now, those 2 families basically have been at war, and there's been internal squabbles within the Hancock family. It's about 2 plots of land, the East Anglers and the Hope Downs. In the end, both sides had a win, both sides had a loss. Gina Reinhardt, Australia's richest person with Rio, will have to pay out the heirs of the Peter Wright side hundreds of millions of dollars. But it kind of brings to an end one of the great feuds of Australian business, and particularly WA mining. Mind you, they'll probably appeal it. The original court judge on it, she actually reached compulsory retirement age, had to retire. The latest judge, well, she got special approval to serve 2 years beyond her mandatory retirement to keep it going. 1,600 pages. What an incredible court case over many years.
Yeah, it is just extraordinary, that one. A quick mention, Sean, of the other remarkable story, I thought, which is the great disruptor getting disrupted itself, Uber, which basically defined the gig economy, disrupted the taxi industry right around the world, is now being disrupted by robo-taxis. It's committed more than $10 billion to buying tens of thousands of autonomous vehicles, taking stakes in the developers as well behind them. Really, we are seeing the beginning of the end of kind of rideshare drivers, major changes ahead to the gig economy, and all that kind of came out this week. Mystery category this week, a couple of big economics things we need to mention quickly. What did you notice?
Business and consumer sentiment, as judged by the National Australia Bank Monthly Business Survey, Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Sentiment Index, both are at lows last seen at COVID and the global financial crisis. Problem is, when people aren't happy, they don't spend money. When businesses aren't happy, they don't invest. This does not augur well for economic growth over the next year or two.
A very speedy mention to the labour force figures, Sean. The unemployment rate held steady at 4.3% last month. The labour market is still very tight. It is still very strong, and it is adding to that case for an interest rate hike when the Reserve Bank board meets again next month. Let's get to the fun stuff, though. The favourite story. Can I suggest one here?
Go for it.
It is the Frenchman winning a Picasso painting in a raffle. I just love it because he only paid €100 for his ticket and won a Picasso worth €1 million, which does feel like at the cheaper end of the Picasso market.
Range,
but
yeah.
I'm not exactly an art expert, but still, I wouldn't complain if someone called me up and said, "You've just won a Picasso." This fella didn't complain, but he did think he was being scammed and asked for proof that it wasn't a prank. And they turned the camera around and showed him the Christie's auction house room where the raffle had been held, raising a lot of money for charity. I just love that story.
It is a very quick mention. The study out of Stanford University, the annoyance economy. So you're thinking spending time on hold, going through pages to try and cancel a subscription worth $165 billion in lost time each year. I like that.
That is huge. All right, there we go. 5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Don't forget to hit follow on the podcast and head along to fearandgreed.com.au to sign up for our free daily newsletter. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. I'm Michael Thompson, and this is the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed.